Okay, we're going to go ahead and start the next session, which actually is a topic that has been touched upon yesterday and today, and that topic is low latency streaming. The first person to talk about this is Yueshi Shen, who is a principal research engineer at Twitch, and his title of his talk is Low Latency Live Streaming at Scale.
All right, thank you. So my name is Yueshi. I'm from Twitch. Today I'm going to talk about low latency streaming at scale. When I was preparing my slides, my talk yesterday, I realized I wrote 35 slides. So I'm going to talk at the light speed. So first, to say a few words about myself. I work for Twitch. I'm in charge of the transcoder team as well as the core video technologies. So including the transcoding, including the video formats, low latency, transcoder cost, etc. Actually, my background is linear TV, so I used to build equipment for TV stations. At one point, I was working for Umbrellas, building chips for Harmonic and Ericsson. So like yesterday's talk or the stuff people are talking about, I feel that was my previous life. And the recent 5 years, I moved to the streaming. On the other hand, I haven't forgot the codec. I came up with the original idea of AV1's switch frame, and thanks to my team that we made it to the AV1 standard. So let me talk a little bit about Twitch first. I'm curious, how many of you know what Twitch is? Can you? Wow. Oh, thank you. That's quite a number of, and I bet you have a 15-year-old boy with. So yeah, we are world's largest UGC live streaming website, and we are targeting young audience, typically between 15 and 25. Well, as well as me, like a mid-aged person, refuse to grow up. So. All right, so in my mind, I think Twitch provides two values to this industry. First is we greatly reduce the barrier of entry for doing broadcast. You no longer need to have a degree of acting, or you no longer need to have an uncle who is directing Hollywood. Anyone who has this simple setup, and as long as you have internet, you can do broadcast. And the second value that we provide is we provide a new paradigm of live broadcast. In future, when I was a kid watching TV, the information is one way. But now at Twitch, you can see that this broadcast is interacting with his audience. So the audience themselves making themselves part of the content, and that makes Twitch very interesting to watch. And because of these contents, so we build a community around that. So we are a video platform, yes, but we are more a social video platform. And talking about our scale, this is the number last year. I remember I gave a talk last year at Streaming Media in New York. At that time, I was talking about how I built a transcoder farm that's supporting, at the peak, 30,000 concurrent channels. But the latest value, I actually checked recently, at our peak, our concurrent channel is 65,000. So consider Twitch as an international TV station. Our internet, at the peak, has 65,000 concurrent channels. And I bet no TV station right now have this scale. And we keep growing, and this is our latest, so 1.5 months ago, E3, if you're a gamer, this is the conference that you pay attention. And at E3, this is the 1.7 million concurrent viewer is a single channel record. Across the website around that time is a lot bigger. Anyway, so we are a live streaming. We claim we are the biggest live stream platform in the world. Oh yeah, and Alexa. I guess many of you are familiar with Alexa ranking. Twitch was launched in 2011, and since then we kind of grown pretty steadily. And now we are the third most popular, according to Alexa, third most popular website behind YouTube and Netflix. All right, so I want to show you a little bit of demo so that you can understand what kind of content that people consume on Twitch. And why low latency is ultra important for our viewing experience. And for people who have raised your hand, you can now understand what your 15-year-old boy doing on Twitch. And where's my mouse? Can I get some? Oh, I see. here. Oh, this is more difficult than this is an interview question. I failed. Okay, I got it. Move the screen. Okay, I see. Oh, here we go. Oh my God, this is so tough. This is so hard. And the machine is frozen.
Just click open.
Oh, just slowly. Okay, I think. Can we make it louder? Where's my mouse?
The mouse is on that screen.
Can you move the mouse to here? So can you hear that? I can do that. Oh, sorry.
If you want to replay, you can do that. Okay.
Can we make it louder? So you can see I was typing and I was interacting with him. Somehow there was some lip sync issue. So if you pay attention, this is our latency number. Probably still here, stop here. It looks there's some lip sync issue in this AV system. How can I get back to the
Just Alt tab.
Alt tab? Okay.
Just go over.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I not very good at using this old one.
You clicked on the presentation mode.
Okay, that's right. Okay, okay. Anyway, so I hope you get some ideas about what's happening. Actually, there's a video I actually have in this presentation. It's on my Twitch channel. You can click it, and you can get a better idea. All right. So nevertheless, I think you get a feel that it's really this interaction between the broadcast and the audience is really important to make the conversation smooth. And because of that, we build a product. For example, in this example, that it is not a gamer, it's not a broadcaster, but the broadcast and the audience are together playing the game. In this example, it's depending on the vote of the audience, decide which character to save. And as we all know, that latency is very critical for the viewing experience. In order to reach interactive viewing experience, we must bring the latency down to 4 seconds, ideally less than 5 seconds. And now I get to the technical part. First, I want to say a few words about the difference between P2P and the broadcast, because you might be asking that I've been using low latency for Skype or Google Hangout, and I've been familiar with 200 millisecond latency, and why that's difficult for broadcast. Typically, there are 3 aspects: scalability, latency, and quality. That it's a trade-off decision depending on application. For OTT streaming or or linear TV, you have to have scalability because you have lots of viewers, and you need to have good quality, but typically you sacrifice latency. But for teleconferencing, it's the opposite. You have to have latency in order to make conversation work, but you typically don't care about scalability or I mean, you care, but it's less important. At Twitch, we want to be greedy. At first, we have to have scalability to support the 1.7 million concurrent viewers. We also want to push the latency and the quality of service as much as possible to the extreme. And how we do that? So we still do HTTP streaming, and we basically change every step of our video pipeline and make it working. And this is our video pipeline. The latency is going from, counted from the light hitting the camera until the light emits from the screen. And at Twitch, that we control every step of this video pipeline, including our CDN. So we have our CDN. So we deploy machines across the world. We have our own backbone network, and also we have our own transcoder and a playback software stack. Apart from number 2 and number 6, we do not have control. Everything else we control. And that's very, very important. And here I want to say a few words about two models. One is push model and versus pull model. Actually, a few years ago, we were using RTMP. It's all push model. So it's a low latency but low scalability. So it's really the client has no control. It's really the server pushing the video stream to the client. So a good analogy is like an Asian tiger mom. They just keep telling his kid that you have to play piano, you have to play soccer. It's low latency, but it's not very scalable because you really need to be able to afford a tiger mom for a player, for one kid. Alternatively, I think my way to describe is the YMCA after school way. The kids really need to be very smart. The kids need to understand what he needs, what he wants to do for the next moment. So HRS, so the transcoder, save after 2-second segment is finished, save it to its memory and make it available, and the client will make a decision that what segment to fetch. But when we switch from RTMP to HRS, actually we lose low latency. Before, our latency was 5 seconds. For HRS, through many years of optimization, the biggest one is shrinking the segment size from 4 seconds to 2 seconds. We were able to reach around 10 seconds of latency, but that's still much longer than RTMP. So the goal of this project is to bring HRS latency down to 5 seconds. And the way we do that, we use an HTTP 1.1 feature called chunk transfer encoding, which a few people mentioned that. So the idea is why this 2-second segment is being generated by the transcoder, being sent by our broadcaster. It is also, in the same time, be consumed by the player. And by doing that, if you look at, this is the breakdown of the total end-to-end latency. We were able to reduce latency in 3 major steps: one, the transcoder, playlist awaiting, and the player buffer. So one thing is the transcoder really doesn't need to wait for the 2-second, wait for the 2-second video to be completely received, then make available to the player. So there's no wait for the playlist. And also the play buffer, there is a smart algorithm putting the player buffer, putting the player make the buffer smaller. So that's how we reach less than 5 second end-to-end latency. So one example to illustrate this feature is, so I was watching this broadcast, this channel, and look at, for every 2-second video segment, I was spending 2 seconds to download that. And you really need to have this consistency in order to achieve end-to-end latency less than 5 seconds. And there are actually so many technical details. For example, if the player make a request of a future segment, and the origin should not fall, and how the transcoder generates a playlist that is still HRS compliant, but is perfectly time aligned and in the chunked manner. Too many details. So this is just one example. As I mentioned, that we have a lot of replication hosts around the world, and this is just one This is one sort of like a real-time monitoring stat on one replication server. On that, for all 2-second segments, it's spending 2 seconds to download. And we really need to make sure that every step in the video pipeline, all of them behave very disciplined. And there's so many details, I don't have time to tell you, and I cannot tell you. And if you're interested, please work for me. I am hiring. And this is not a joke, I am serious. So a lot of people talking about backend. Actually, the most difficult part for realizing 5-second latency is the front end. I feel the industry is kind of ignoring that, and let me tell you why. So this is a rough, like a workflow of the low latency. So as I mentioned, the transcoder is working on this 2-second segment, and generating some chunk, which might be 1 frame or several frames, through the CDN and give it to the player. And player receive that. For us, is we transmux from transport stream into fragment MP4 and put that into the player buffer. So if you like that, so from that end all the way here, this is the total end-to-end latency. So roughly that's what the player does. And one critical role, or I think the most important feature for ABR player is it has an algorithm constantly running, try to understand what is my current bandwidth. So in this example, the player realized that in the beginning, it knows that my bandwidth drops. So I have to drop to a lower rendition. Then later on, when the network condition resume, it will just go back and resume back to 1060p. 1080p60. So as you can see, that's the player is constantly checking what is my bandwidth, and that is trivial for segment-based streaming, because consider the player make a request for that segment if that segment already exists on the edge server, and the limiting factor for downloading time is only the download speed. So there's no other limiting factor. But in this mode, in the chunk transfer mode, such segment is simultaneously being generated by the transcoder and being downloaded. So the limiting factor is not only the download speed, but also the transcoding speed. So if you take an average download speed of a video segment, no matter how high your bandwidth is, you will always get the average bit rate of the segment. And if you look at the instantaneous chunk download speed, you will get this. And this is really the input into the ABI algorithm. Then I really need to, for first question, to figure out what is my download bandwidth based on this input. And the Twitch team has developed some algorithm to figure out the bandwidth and also an ABI algorithm around it. Again, I can't tell the detail. Please work for me if you want to know the detail. This is not the worst. There's even worse news. So for this one, you can see, you can still kind of figure out what's going on. So it looks like in this situation, the bandwidth is enough. And that is all because on Chrome, it actually, as soon as it receives some byte, it will actually tell, there's a JavaScript API to tell the player that I have downloaded this many bytes. But for Firefox, the situation is different. It doesn't report until it hit a 50 millisecond time interval. So it only reports the number of bytes received every 50 milliseconds. So I guess every one of you can read this. This is a 50 millisecond. So it kind of refuses to report you. It only accumulates enough and wait for 50 milliseconds, then report to you. So if you look at this, if you're using this data, look at the chunk instantaneous download speed, what you get is actually the video bit rate. Your input typically have no information, no signal. So if anyone work for Mozilla, please can we talk after meeting? If I don't get a pay rise next year because of this, we need to talk. All right. So this is a summary of my talk. At Twitch, that we built low latency streaming technology in order to service our content, and hopefully now you know what your 15-year-old boy doing on Twitch. And it's a very different problem as doing broadcast low latency is a very different problem as P2P communication. And we really have to control every step of the pipeline, and we do innovation in transcoder, replication, and the player. And that's my talk. Thank you.
Questions? Okay.
So is the chat synchronized with the actual media play?
Yeah. No. So the chat is going through a different service, and you can think that chat is instantaneous.
But then if my delay is a bit higher than other guys who are chatting already, there might be some sort of...
You are very right. So we do not shoot for synchronized latency. We shoot for the best latency. Yes, some viewers that have high latency.
So that's a design choice.
That's a design. That's a product call.
Right.
So any more questions?
So you go from RTMP to TS, and then you go from TS in the client transmix back to fragmented MP4. Why not go from RTMP straight to the chunked encoded fragmented MP4 and then avoid that client overhead of having to transmix?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The reason we do HRS is it's more historical reason, because we have so many channels we cannot afford having multiple formats, so that we do HRS because supported by all the clients, and we do that just in all our replication. It's just a very cheap HTTP server, so it's architecture of our replication network.
Any other question?
I'm curious, how does stream resiliency fit in? You know, if you're uploading it to a single service, but there's gaps, there's missing segments, do you guys have, you know, replication services or backup streams, or is it just you don't have it, you don't have it?
So are you talking about the redundancy on the ingesting side, or you're talking about the whole network, so distribution side?
Yeah, so I guess if I'm uploading, am I uploading it to a single point, and if there's a problem with that point, the stream is dead, or am I uploading it to multiple points, and then somehow as a consumer, I can pick which, you know, somehow manage between the different sources?
Yeah. So I think you're talking about redundancy in just a point. Yeah, we do have that, but that's only for premium content. Again, that we have so many channels, we cannot afford giving this to too many. So if it's something happened, usually our streamer will rebroadcast. So they will terminate and re-ingest again. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right.
Just to follow up on Will Law's question about what devices are not supporting fragmented MP4 today that would, because all of the iOS devices and
yeah. So for all the browsers, first all the browsers support fragment MP4 from our test. Actually, yes. But for the iOS and Android, we have our own player, so it doesn't matter which format. We just feed it elementary stream.
But iOS supports CMAP.
iOS, what we do, okay, so we can either do just using the AV player, but we have our own player that's feeding that. Yeah.
Another round of applause.
Thank you.